Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is TowerGate day number 898, September the 15th, 2019, Sunday. Thank you so much for tuning in this morning. Okay, don't forget today's video, in the comments section of this video, to put in your votes for Dumbass of the Week. And I will do my very best to make sure every vote is counted. It seems like almost every week I miss one or two people. I'm sorry. I do my best to get all those votes in there. Make sure you have your vote in by 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and God willing, we'll get all the votes counted. So get your vote in for Dumbass of the Week on the comments section of this video. The first thing I want to talk about is this interview that Trey Gowdy did with Hannity on, I think it was Friday night. But it was the most recent interview that Trey Gowdy did with Sean Hannity, and yeah, a lot of reaction on that, especially the comments section was kind of going crazy. Of course, it really didn't surprise me because, I mean, it's just Trey Gowdy being Trey Gowdy. You know, I mean, Trey Gowdy is, you know, he is a lawyer and he loves playing one on TV. And so he's always going to give you these lawyerly answers. So it's funny because Hannity goes through the typical spiel that he runs through. You know, in this particular case, he's talking with Gowdy, and he's wanting Gowdy, just like he wants everyone, after he lays out his talking point, he wants everyone to come back and say, oh yeah, well, based on those talking points, oh yeah, McCabe, Comey, they should all be indicted, the whole 9 yards, which is fine. We all pretty much agree with that. So he's getting down to the nitty-gritty on the details of the recently learning that that Barr has now got the IG report. He's talking about the previous report, but anyway, he's talking specifically focusing on the Carter Page FISA. And of course, he's trying to get Gowdy to say, oh yeah, based on everything we know about the Carter Page FISA, yeah, Comey should definitely go to jail, and anyone who signed off on it should also go to jail. Now, that is my personal belief. It's the belief of a lot of people. But of course, as you can, you know, imagine, Trey Gowdy, you know, he's coming back to Hannity and saying, well, you know, in this country, you know, you're innocent until proven guilty. You know, we have to wait till all the evidence is on the table. We have to wait and see. And then he took it a little bit farther, and then when he's driving Hannity nuts all at the same time, because Hannity is just doing everything he can to get Gowdy to give him a definitive and affirmative answer of yes, you know, Comey and everyone who signed off on the FISA awards should go to jail, the whole 9 yards. But of course, Gowdy's not going there. And then he starts taking Hannity into other territory, where he starts saying, well, you know, a prosecutor can be, and they do it all the time in front of judges, that they factually misrepresent things in front of judges all the time. And that can result in, you know, being in contempt of court, getting a tongue lashing from the judge, but it rarely results in someone going to jail. It could. You could be thrown in jail for contempt, but it rarely happens. Of course, this is driving Hannity nuts because, again, there's so many other things going on. And at that point, and that's when, you know, Hannity comes back to him and says, look, they just didn't sign off on the warrant. It's why they signed off and lied, to spy on a presidential campaign and to do all these other things. At which point, Gowdy's then telling him, yeah, well, exactly. Now you're going to a different territory now, because you're not just talking about misrepresenting evidence to a court. Now you're talking about other things, and that's where Gowdy starts talking about, well, you have to actually match a crime from the criminal code to some activity, some action that was taken. And Gowdy says that's the tricky part, is that with all the stuff that will come out in the Horowitz report, or whether it's what they've got on McCabe or what they had with the previous thing with Comey, you've got to take a criminal code violation and match that to the conduct, and then you have to prove that conduct, prove intent, and all the various other things. So this is really the point that Gowdy was making to Hannity, driving him absolutely nuts. And of course, he never would, nor will he ever actually come out and make a prediction like that. That's just not what Trey Gowdy does. He will always say, innocent till proven guilty, wait till all the evidence comes out, the whole 9 yards. And of course, Gowdy is one of the 3 Republicans who have seen just about everything on the FISA, Carter Page FISA. He's seen it, Ratcliffe has seen it, and Nunes has seen just about everything as well. So they all pretty much know. Now, somehow, through, I don't know how this happened, but somehow that interview, I think because it was posted up on Conservative Treehouse, right next to another story that was posted on Conservative Treehouse, which is actually a story that's a Sundance story, And I love Conservative Treehouse. Don't get me wrong. I read Conservative Treehouse every day. They've done a great job on Spygate. Follow them a lot. Sundance is great. The whole group over there. But in the story right after the story that they posted with Trey Gowdy, they actually take and look at the letter that Horowitz, Inspector General Huckleberry Horowitz, they take a look at the letter and they look at this wording where Horowitz says that his report is dealing specifically with this person, this U.S. person, that's Carter Page, specifically looking at the FISA warrant specifically on Carter Page. It's not talking about anything else. It's not going into the contractors that were accessing the NSA database. It's not going into a lot of the details beyond that, the background, the foreground, or anything else. It's a very focused look at policies and procedures regarding the 4 FISA warrants on Carter Page, who they describe as the U.S. Person. And there's some wording in that letter that I guess perked up the ear of Sundance. And so he goes on to elaborate from what's in the letter with IG Horowitz, somehow that it may be suggesting, and I don't know how this gets tied into what Trey Gowdy was saying, but I guess because Trey Gowdy was raising some doubts as to, or essentially he was almost like preparing Hannity for, hey, be prepared, because there may not be anybody getting indicted here. It may just be they get a tongue lashing. It may just be that, yeah, they misled the FISA court while they could be in contempt. They could get, but he said most of the time what will happen is you'll get fired. You could have your law license suspended or taken away completely. You could have various other types of things like this happen to you, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be indicted. So this is kind of where Trey Gowdy was going with Sean Hannity. Then that somehow gets morphed into what Sundance is talking about the letter that Horowitz sent to the Congress to alert them to the fact that he has provided his report. It is complete. He's given it to Barr, and now it's going through the review and classification process. And he's being very specific, as he always is in his wording, Horowitz, saying here's specifically what I was looking at. It's the FISAs. It's on the U.S. person. Blah 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 blah. So somehow all this has got put together, and it led to Sundance getting really specific about Horowitz's wording in the letter, so that Sundance wants to say, and I assume Sundance is the he, it could be a she, but Sundance is then making a leap. It's a logical leap, but it's a leap, that it's possible that Carter Page was not a victim. Not a victim. In other words, maybe what Sundance is trying to say is that what Trey Gowdy, the point he was trying to get across to Hannity without coming out and actually saying it, was that, hey, wait a minute, we don't know everything. Yes, everything that we know about in the public record certainly looks like what you say is true. Carter Page was spied on illegally, and they lied to the FISA court and withheld Brady information and all this other stuff. But hey, we don't know everything. It's very possible that Carter Page was not a victim. In other words, the point Sundance is making, based on the Gowdy interview and the wording, the specific wording of the Inspector General Huckleberry Horowitz, is that maybe we're going to find out that Carter Page was not a victim at all. In fact, maybe Carter Page was working with the FBI and allowing himself to have a FISA warrant on him so that they could use the two-hop rule to investigate the Trump campaign. And therefore, Carter Page would have been willing to have this FISA on him so that they could use him simply to get the two hops to get the people around Trump. In other words, Carter Page not a victim in all this, but rather Carter Page was working for the government. Now, that's quite a leap. I'm not saying I would rule it 100% out, because there are some very questionable things regarding Carter Page and why he was the one guy who, even though he had the 4 FISAs on him, he was the target of all of it, yet he's the guy that they literally spent 0 time investigating. Are any of you familiar with any information in the Mueller report or by any of the committees or by anybody in the Crossfire Hurricane or any other investigation, have any of you seen any real in-depth or even cursory mentions of efforts that were taken to investigate Carter Page? I haven't. It looks like they got 4 FISA warrants on him and never really dug in to investigate. They dug deep on Papadopoulos, on Michael Flynn, on the Dutch lawyer, on Caputo, on Stone, on Manafort, on Gates. But they really didn't even scratch the surface on Carter Page. Yet he's the guy they got the 4 FISAs on. So, yeah, I mean, there's some questions, and Carter Page's behavior is peculiar. But he's kind of a peculiar guy. We also know that he admitted, not initially, after 2 years, he admitted that he's been a long-time asset for the intelligence community and a long time, over 20 years, as an FBI informant. And we know he was an FBI informant working on a case with them up until March of 2016. And then they go and get a FISA on him 6 months later. But they don't seem to investigate him. And keep in mind, to get a FISA warrant, you're going to the court and saying, this person, we have solid evidence that this person is not only working with a foreign government, but is working on behalf of a foreign government to do some harm to the country. He's working as a foreign agent, not as a lobbyist. You don't get a FISA warrant for lobbyists. No, it's that Carter Page is working for a foreign government. Now, that would require a tremendous amount of evidence to make that case, and it would also then require that probably after you do it, that you actually do a real investigation of him. But we don't seem to see much of either of those things. So I can certainly appreciate why Sundance is skeptical. He would watch the Gowdy interview, then look at the specific wording of the Horowitz letter, and come to the conclusion that it's very possible that Carter Page was not a victim, and that he was in fact working with the government, and that he allowed them to get the, in other words, they probably went to him and said, hey, we really need to get, if you could help us with this investigation, we need to conduct surveillance on people around Trump to find all this stuff out. And you're a part of his campaign. You're talking to people in his campaign. As you know, we have the 2-hop rule. If we can get a warrant to monitor you, we can then monitor him and everyone around him. Would you be willing to cooperate with us? Sort of thing. So that would mean that everything that Carter Page has said and done up to this time is all a charade. It's a facade. It's very confusing and murky. Again, I would say the odds of that, I think, are pretty low, but I think that there are odds that are there. I'd say maybe 10% that's a possibility that Carter Page was working for the government and that he, in fact, was not illegally surveyed because he was working with them and agreed to have those surveillance warrants. But still, I guess the part of that I would scratch my head on and be curious about is if, in fact, Carter Page was working for the government as part of this investigation, it seems to me that's something they have to tell the FISA court. They would have to say, hey, this U.S. person that we're going to get the FISA on is fully aware that we're going to get the FISA on him. He's working for us. He's going to let us get a FISA on him so that we can use the 2-hop rule to listen to our real target. But then again, the FISA court might shoot that down and say, well, wait a minute. The FISA warrant is to find someone who might be, an agent of a foreign government. You're saying that your guy is not the agent of a foreign government, but he's willing to let himself be used as such in order to get a warrant to spy on the real target. I think the FISA court would say, you got to get some evidence on the actual target. On the actual target. You can't have people agreeing to work for the FBI to allow themselves to be surveyed so that you can take advantage of the 2-hop rule to get to someone you really want to get to, whom you can't get to because you don't have the evidence to come to this court and get a warrant the correct way. So, again, Carter Page would have to be involved in allowing this to happen to him, and then even if they went to the FISA court And even if Carter Page was working with them, the fact is they still lied to the FISA court, because they told the FISA court that the target was Carter Page. That's the guy that went to FISA on, Carter Page. That's what they told the FISA court. So even if it was Carter Page working for them and he was allowing them to get to FISA, they still lied to the FISA court because they didn't tell them that. So I guess I don't quite understand the full argument being made here by Sundance. I get it, but I just don't think that's very likely. I think Carter Page is kind of a peculiar character, and I think that's probably the best we can say. I think that, and when he came out a couple weeks ago and said that something else he had never come forward with is when he said that they tried to force him to lie. They tried to force him to go into court and read a statement they had given him that was not factually true. That's what caused him to back out. So, I think there's a lot to be learned here. I will be interested to see what's in the Horowitz report. Certainly Durham will have a lot more around it all, but the Horowitz report is going to focus simply on policies, procedures, things that were done, getting the FISA warrant on Page. I would be very surprised if there's a big bombshell in there that Carter Page was working with the government and allowed himself to be FISA'd. I don't think we're going to find that out. That would be, it's possible, but I give it a very low probability. But anything can happen. But anyway, I think it's interesting that we have this being kicked around right now, and it's probably worth mentioning. I'm sure some of you saw that interview with Gowdy, and some of you probably read that story in Conservative Treehouse too. So anyway, just tying that together, trying to get a better understanding of why we're getting this take on this overall thing with Gowdy's interview and with the letter Horowitz wrote to Congress. I think we may be reading too much into that letter. I think what Horowitz is trying to say is that his investigation was very focused and very narrow, unlike Durham's investigation or Barr's investigation, which is this wide-ranging investigation which is going everywhere in every direction. I think Horowitz is trying to say it was narrowly focused specifically on the FISA warrants, on this U.S. person, and I think there's also information in there about the dossier, because that's primarily what they used to get the FISA warrant. So I think the biggest revelation we're probably going to find here from the Horowitz report is the other evidence that was used in addition to the dossier. I think we're going to find that was the Shearer information, the Shearer dossier. I think that's what we're going to learn. That's what Nunes has alluded to. So there you go. Now, we just covered this story a couple days ago about Michael Flynn's lawyer, Sidney Powell, requesting these 40 documents. As we know, one of the key documents, and a document that Nunes tried to get, the Republicans in the House tried to get, the Oversight Committee tried to get it, Gowdy tried to get it, Jordan is trying to get it, Meadows, Jordan tried to get this. They've not been able to get this document. Sidney Powell's trying to get it, and the document that we're talking about here is that apparently just a few days before the inauguration, before Trump's inauguration, a British national security official, same level as, say, Condoleezza Rice or Michael Flynn, that would have been the same level, this British national security official, high level, sent a letter to Michael Flynn and Susan Rice, the outgoing NSA National Security Council, and the incoming is who he sent the letter to, that raised questions about Steele's information and the reliability of his accusations. And of course, this was just days before the inauguration. This is a very damning piece of evidence for the government if Sidney Powell gets her hands on it, and it's a very devastating piece of evidence against the coup plotters, because it will be just one more piece of evidence coming from a high-level British national security official saying, hey, don't pay any attention to Steele. His stuff's unreliable. It's a bunch of garbage. He's been feeding us this stuff for months. We can't confirm any of it. We don't think it's true. You better be careful. So we knew that she was trying to get that letter, and we knew that Flynn, we had already been reported that Flynn had been this letter had been sent to him. But this is the first time I've heard that letter was also sent to Susan Rice. Susan Rice, who then went on a couple days later, probably a day or two after this, if not the very day, because we don't have many days to deal with here, and wrote that cover your ass letter. So Susan Rice personally, this letter was addressed to her personally, telling her not to buy into the Christopher Steele stuff. So that needs to be explained, I think. So now we've done that. Now that also carries over into an interview that Lindsey Graham did with Hannity on the radio. And I think this was on Thursday or Friday, where Graham is telling Hannity that there are 5 or 6 warnings that were given to the FBI and DOJ. And of course, this letter by this British national security official would be one of them. That there were 5 or 6 warnings to the FBI, the DOJ, that Steele's information was not credible. But because it is classified, Graham says we only know, that means all of us who haven't read the classified stuff, only know of about 3 examples where they were told, hey, this stuff is not credible. And that would have been, of course, Bruce Orr, Kavalik, and one other source telling him, hey, you better watch out, this stuff's probably not legit. But Graham says that there's 2 or 3, at least 2 or 3 other pieces of information that he has seen that's classified that none of us know about, that also was warnings that the Steele information, or what they call the Steele information, was not legitimate, not credible, not believable, not true. So I think that that's what we'll certainly be looking for, and I would expect that one of the things he's talking about is this letter that was sent by this British national security official. The thing is, this thing's been out there for a very long time. Everybody's trying to get their hands on it. Clearly, Susan Rice was sent a copy, and so was Michael Flynn. You would think that they would be able to get a copy of it. I don't know if they kept it in their personal records, but it would certainly be with the State Department or with the National Security Council. The DOJ would likely have a copy. You would think that the intelligence community would have a copy. You would think the FBI would have a copy. And certainly the British government would have a copy. Maybe that's why Attorney General Barr was over in the UK. Maybe he's trying to get the letter from them. Who knows? Well, we now have 2 more major publications coming out and telling Biden that it's time to throw in the towel. We now have Rolling Stone doing a major feature article. Basically, in the title of the article is pretty much Biden should drop out. Biden should drop out. Yes, of course. And up until now, the 3 network news, the main network news, had been staying off of Biden. But yesterday, Friday night, CBS did a segment. They had 2 guests on, and the point that both of those guests were making was that Biden is making too many gaffes. Like I said a couple weeks ago, the Right Reverend Clinton has put out the word. It will take 4 to 6 weeks to drive Biden out. By probably the 2nd week of October, he'll be done. The Draft Hillary campaign will be in full operational mode, because then they'll look around and say, uh-oh, now what are we going to do? All we have is a bunch of crazy leftists who will get destroyed in a national election, probably lose 50 states. What are we going to do? Who can we turn to? The Rotten Reverend. She's ready to go. She's campaigned up. She's never quit campaigning. She's got her organization. In fact, she's now got a new organization to go along with her original organization. She continues to raise money. She did a $50,000 plate dinner this week in New York, or D.C. rather, at her D.C. mansion. She's ready and raring to go. She's got a new book coming out about gutsy women. And what is it about a gutsy woman? Well, they don't quit. Get it? Now, as most of you know who follow my channel, before Biden ever threw his hat in the ring, I said there's just no way. This guy's not going to make it. Before he ever threw his hat in the ring, I said he can go ahead and throw it. He can go ahead and, I know he's polling the highest right now. As soon as he comes in, he'll be the top poll runner. And then day after day after day, he will only go one direction, and that is down. And eventually, when people finally realize that this guy is definitely not with it, that, he's not going to make it. Now, I've been watching Biden for 30 years. This guy, and his age is certainly contributing to the problems he's having with his speech and his memory and various other things, but I made that statement back before he threw his hat in the ring because of his previous 30 years that I've been watching this guy. The fact that he's having these issues with speech and stuff, that's part of it, but he's always been a dumbass. And he has always told lies. He's always exaggerated and made things up. He's always been kind of nutty. I've been watching this guy for years. He's always been this way. It's just that now he's not able to catch himself as quickly, and he can't articulate his points so well. So now it makes it easier to actually hone in on what the hell he's saying. Before, he would say crazy stuff and it would just blow right by. it just kind of blow by, and they go, okay, well, thanks a lot, Joe, and they go on the next guy or whatever. He used to be one of the regular guests on the ABC morning show, even before Tim Russert. Tim Russert was there for a long time, or in NBC. But even before Russert, I can't remember who was there before Russert. I think it was Schieffer. And before Schieffer, there was a guy before Schieffer. And I can go all the way back. Russert era, Schieffer era, and before him. So I can go all the way back, like 25, 30 years. Biden was always a crackpot. He always made up stories. He always got things wrong. He always had the same sort of attitude he's got now. He was never particularly brilliant, sharp, intelligent, witty, or anything else. He's always been, I mean, he's from Delaware. He managed to get elected to a Senate seat in Delaware, okay? This guy is definitely not the brightest bulb in the room, and never was. And I knew this, so these gaffes are not just age-related or whatever. He's been making these gaffes for as long as I've been watching this guy, since I was a very young man. I've been watching this guy since I was almost like very young, like early 20s. I've been paying attention to Biden. So very, very long time I'm watching this guy. That's why I knew what everybody else in the media and many other people are now saying, well, I just don't think Joe's going to make it. Hell, I was saying that a long time ago. Now everyone else is starting to figure it out. Just like I was saying a long time ago that Steele didn't write the dossier. Now people are starting to figure that out. And I've been saying for the longest time now that the Right Reverend Clinton was the mastermind of this operation. And at some point in time, in the not too distant future, I expect that finally they're going to get to the bottom of this thing. And it's going to turn out that people are going to start saying, okay, well, it looks like it may have been the Rotten Reverend Clinton who was pipelining and pushing and really driving the driving force behind this whole thing. And I'll be proven right again. Not to brag or anything, but, you know, it's not bragging, I guess, if you can do it. Or if you have done it, in my case. Iran. Well, it looks like some Iranian-backed individuals have been dropping some drone strikes over on the Saudi oil fields. About half the Saudi oil fields are on fire and are in the process of being put back in shape again. Expect for gas prices to rise here over the next few days if they haven't already. And you got to wonder, why would the Iranians do this? Why would the Iranians do this? Why do they want to push Trump? And quite honestly, the Saudis have a pretty stout military. They're aligned militarily and intelligence purposes with the Israelis. They have other friends in the region. Iran doesn't have that many friends in the region right now. Their best friend was Syria, and they're not in any position to help. Got to wonder, who is it that is giving the Iranians this advice? And why the hell are they taking it? I mean, it's not going to work out well for them. I don't see how they win in this deal. It's not like people don't know that these people who are carrying out this stuff are essentially Hezbollah or proxies for the Iranians. But we do know that John F. Kerry, who, by the way, served in Vietnam, John F. Kerry and some other former Obama administration officials have been cozying up with the Iranians over at the UN and have been having visits with their foreign secretary, and they've been having conversations and meetings and various other things. You got to wonder if John F. Kerry and his crew of former Obama administration officials, and that would probably include people like Newland or Powers, people like that. You got to wonder if they are advising the Iranians to do this, to force Trump into doing something that could create a quagmire. To see if Trump... Now, Bolton's gone, so if Bolton were still around, in fact, I'm probably sure that Bolton, maybe one of the reasons why he's gone is because he probably told Trump, hey, you got to hit the Iranians. You got to hit them. And he probably disagreed, to be my guess. He's trying to get a negotiation with them, and Bolton didn't want Trump meeting with the Iranians. Now, all of a sudden, the Iranians go and do something that's really pretty stupid, and you got to wonder where that's coming from. What group of individuals would advise the Iranians to do that, and why would they take that advice? What do they hope to gain from that? And the only thing I can think of is that they're trying to bait Trump into hitting them directly, and I don't think he'll do it. I think he'll pick up the phone and call the Saudis and say, we've sold you guys thousands and thousands of billions and billions of dollars in military hardware, our highest technology fighter jets, air defense, missiles. The Israelis have the same type of equipment. The Israelis and the Saudis could do some serious damage to Iran. Now, I doubt that that's the what Trump will advise, because they don't want to see a wider war. They'll probably try to find another way to deal with the Iranians. But either way, you got to wonder who is advising the Iranians. Why would they take the advice? What did they hope to gain? And does this have anything to do with the past couple of years that John F. and Kerry, who, by the way, served in Vietnam, along with former Obama administration officials, have been having meetings with the Iranian foreign minister and maybe other diplomats? What is there anything going on there? You got to wonder. We also got a report that Osama bin Laden's son was killed in a raid over the weekend, and I guess that was in Afghanistan. So I guess the only thing you have to wonder there is, do you think Osama bin Laden's son was also a CIA asset? That's a good question. We have Matt Whitaker, who went on Fox Business with Lou Dobbs, and Lou Dobbs again is pressing Matt Whitaker about what he thinks is going to result from not just Horowitz's report, but also the investigation that Barr and Durham are doing. In fact, he was focusing mostly on the Barr-Durham investigation. And Whitaker, of course, he's very careful about the way he words things, but let's keep in mind he was acting Attorney General, and he was Sessions' Chief of Staff for quite a while. And it was once said that Whitaker had been put in to be Trump's eyes and ears in the Justice Department, paying attention to what the Mueller investigation was doing. And so he comes from a position where his opinion probably carries some weight, and he basically told Dobbs that he said, quote, "From what I know," and he knows a lot more than we do, "from what I know, I think the IG report is going to be fairly dramatic." And then he talked about how we can never allow this to happen to another president again. What's he talking about? We can only be talking about a coup. That's what he's talking about. So while Horowitz, Huckleberry Horowitz, may be focusing on policies and procedure violations, workplace violations by Comey, McCabe, or people who went to the FISA court, that would entail, I think, certainly quite a few people signed off on those FISAs. Comey signed off on 2. McCabe signed off on 1. Rodenstein signed off on 1. Strzok signed off. Then you had the DOJ people who also signed off. You had silly Sally Yates. Loretta Lynch claims to have never even seen the FISA on Carter Page, never knew anything about it. She's completely dumb, doesn't know anything about it. All Sally Yates was taking care of all that. Loretta Lynch throwing Sally under the bus, and I imagine a lot of people are going to throw Sally under the bus. Anyway, that's what Whitaker said. So that's for what it's worth. Then we also have good news on the impeachment front. Of course, Nadler is trying to run this, I don't know what you would call it. It's not an impeachment hearing. It's like a pre-impeachment hearing. It's never been done before. It's kind of silly. It's not going anywhere. But what he really wants is to get that grand jury information. He's been after it since, the Democrats won the midterms and he became the chairman. He's been trying to get this because someone has convinced him that there's something in that grand jury information they can use to pick away at to maybe get something on Trump. Now, as we know, right after the midterms, Lawfare sent about a half a dozen lawyers over to the Congress in the House to assist these committee heads on how to go about getting Trump. We know that a couple of them were sent to Nadler, a couple were sent to Schiff, a couple were sent to Maxine Waters, and a couple were sent to Cummings. They all have these Lawfare people. They're the ones who are running these 4 idiots, because these 4 idiots, the Penguin and his friends, are too stupid to negotiate any of this. This is all being propagated by these Lawfare people who have been embedded into these committees and are advising people like Nadler, Schiff, Waters, and Cummings. And that's who's pushing them to try to get this grand jury information. So they obviously, these are people who had inside information about the Mueller investigation, because that would be Wiseass and all the rest, Jenny Rhee and all the rest, who are part of the Lawfare. So they're digging and digging and digging, and as we know, the DOJ has now sent a letter back to Nadler and advised him they are not going to produce the grand jury information because what he's doing is not an actual impeachment hearing. It's not an actual court proceeding. And that's the end of that. Thanks so much for tuning in. I'll be back tomorrow with more Towergate. See ya. Bye.